Great. Onwards and upwards with our afternoon of scintillating briefings and information and discussion.
Okay, so we're doing the PDF one first.
Welcome to Neil Mackay. And Mark and Chris and Darren. We're looking forward to this.
Kia ora. So this is a tale of two halves. Our first half is going to be just stepping through the existing Economic Development Strategy 2020 to 23, bit of a closeout report briefing. And I just want to share that this is in advance of us coming to Council on the 29th of August. So we're hoping that if people have any queries, concerns, or things they'd like to dive into a bit more deeply, that could be signalled today. The information is available on LG Hub, and following this briefing, we will follow up just to check back in. That's the first half of the discussion today.
Okay, so we don't have to answer every question and tick every box today.
No, but I will come round and ask you if you've got anything you wanted to know or need to know in advance of the 29th of August, just so we can have a nice, tidy run into that. The second half of today is then going to be just reminding you or recapping on the EDKB operating model that we're also going to be talking to you about on the 29th of August. So again, I've noted in the pack that's also on LG Hub previous briefings that we have raised, chatted, discussed with you. Again, looking for any feedback or comments. We'll circle back round to you, but in advance of the 29th would be good to understand what those things are.
Sorry, what's happening on the 29th?
29th Council, and on the 29th we're coming to do our...
I know it's a meeting, but what's in it?
Close off of the current ED strategy to go, here's what we've delivered, ta-da! Getting an in-principle decision around the EDKB operating model. And I just want to flag that we will be coming back, as we did with the affordable housing entity, to dig into the detail that sits underneath that. So things like the trust deed and a relationship management framework and all the other good things that we've been unpacking. It'll be a very similar process that we go through, making sure that you get a chance to have input into test and poke and prod and for it to land in the right way. So we're not asking for all of that at once. We're doing a bit of a staged decision process. Over to Mark or Neil. Are you opening, Neil?
Press this. That's it.
Yep.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Look, thank you for making yourselves available for this presentation. This is going to be a shared presentation. We're going to share it amongst the ED team and myself. 2023 is what we're going to focus on initially. It's been a very interesting time from 2023, and Mark will just step us through what you would have already seen, and we're just going to sort of pick out some points in that, and I will come in as required to elaborate on some of the aspects of that. So I'll pass it over to Mark, and he will take us from there.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for the opportunity to go through the last 4 years of progress in economic development and tourism. And if we take this presentation as read, I'd like to highlight some of the outcomes in particular, but just to note that there's been a great increase in engagement with the business community, and that in causing some of the leadership, industry-led leadership, to chart their own destiny. You can see some of the impact of that over the last 4 years. It's been really important to engage with the current business support ecosystem and understand how that works and how that likes to work, as well as bring new constructs into that ecosystem in the form of clusters. so industry-led clusters. And you'll hear us highlight 3 of those: the food and beverage production cluster, the tourism cluster, and an emerging cluster now in technology. There are others, of course, and the technology cluster is well aligned to some of the startup thinking that's going on and creating a business startup ecosystem as well. So that's how we'd like to introduce this today. Also noting that in carrying out this implementation plan over the last 4 years, it's been heavily based on our 2 foundational documents. That's the Destination Management Plan and the Workforce Plan. So the Destination Management Plan, you'll recall, has many different strategic areas: product development, tourism experience, visitor attraction, marketing, and now most recently the development of an initial destination story for Kapiti. So elected members are starting to get across that as well. So that's one of the big foundations of our implementation that's been successful, and the other one being the workforce plan, where out of that we have started to develop skills pathways towards employment, in particular for rangatahi. So that whole piece of work has led to piloting a skills hub, again with an industry player, attracting Mayor's Task Force for Jobs funding. And as we see those not in employment, educational training, those numbers going up at the moment due to the overall climate, we just realise how important those programs were. As another quick overview piece, we note, as Darren also takes us through some of the impact measures in our economy, we note that during the first 3 years of that strategy, where the EDKB was set up, etc., that Kapiti District outperformed the Wellington region consistently in the most important measures, which we'll take you through, and in fact outperformed the nation. And during COVID, we were almost the fastest growing district economically throughout the COVID. From pre-COVID to March 2023, we grew 14% in total over that entire period, second only to Tasman District. So I guess the council can take some comfort that all that effort and investment has actually borne fruit, as you'll see in the economic measures. So this presentation is largely in 3 parts. We talk about the delivery, and there's quite a few delivery tables there for you. We talk about, even more importantly, is the outcomes and the impacts, and you'll see that in these statistics that we present. And then the third part is really to talk about those measures and what they mean going forward, because as Neil touched on, from about 2023 now through to now, we've seen a dip in our economic performance in Kapiti. Not unusual across the country, but I think we've been heavily down-weighted by the Wellington economy. It's not just me thinking this. There are signs that the lag from Wellington City not being in good shape has had an impact on our economy. So that just means we've got to be extra cautious, extra vigilant going forward. That this is another big opportunity for this council to show the leadership that it has been showing. So if I take control of you'll recall our strategy is based on 5 pillars or PO: koteitanga, manaakitanga, whānau, kaitiakitanga, and whakapapa. And that's the very broad brush objectives. And in particular, the impact measures that we'll take you through quickly are employment growth, which has been a success; mean income growth, which again is we're starting to nudge the national average. That's an achievement in itself. Business unit growth has gone up and up with a slight dip at one stage, and then GDP growth has been fairly steady until recently, where our economy actually has shrunk 1%. So that is an impact. We've provided some dashboards for you to visually gain very quickly an understanding of completion status.
So, if I could just start with the first one. Can you hear me right? Hello? Just in terms of the establishment of the Koteitanga Board, That was it was a move that was made by both KEDA and the Chamber very, very early on in the piece to get an independent body together, to get an independent board together, because previous sort of iterations of boards had not been functioning as well. They contained factional groups within them, and it impeded the ability to be able to actually get things done. So it was good to get off to that start and to get that support and to actually build a board that was based on skills aligned really to the strategies that we're looking to deliver. So that was an important start, and no sooner had we started, we moved into COVID, and we saw actually partnerships starting to work. We saw the Chamber, we saw the KEDA, and we saw the EDKB working together to make sure that the messaging to the businesses during that COVID period was effective and one voice, and that worked beautifully together. So it showed and demonstrated to us all just what was going to be the framework going forward.
So we'll ask councillors also to consider the next step through the transition to the operating model. You can see that that's not yet a completed process. During the COVID recovery plan, we carried out all of the actions in that plan, and in particular, it was to understand how best to provide specific business support, working with Chamber of Commerce, KEDA, Te Raupu Pākehī and other organisations, and to really understand how to get the best information to businesses during that very tricky time, and who could do what best and how we could work together. So COVID had those spillover benefits of helping bring us together, as Neil said. So actions to support mana whenua and Māori business, as you can see, are not quite there yet, and we're making every endeavour there. And you can see some of the areas we are particularly focused on, in particular workforce, skills pathways through to employment, and also working closely with the Māori Business Network, Te Raupu Pākehī, which spans Horowhenua and Kapiti, and working with Māori landowners in terms of how we can optimise land use, especially if it could be technology enabled and be profitable and supporting in its own right.
Yeah. I suppose just in terms of the indicators, lots of these actions are long-term actions and they're ongoing pieces of work. They're not just tick the box, it's done. And so, you know, I suppose it's been sort of conscious when we set those that we're on a journey with a lot of this stuff. It's things that will need to continue over time and continue to build momentum. And, you know, a lot of the initial groundwork has been done. So you'll see things like we've had the development of a destination management plan. That's a tick the box in terms of that piece of work. The next bit's the implementation of that, and that's the long-term, ongoing piece of work. But same with sort of the, you know, what's happened in terms of EDKB. The first part was the establishment. Actually, what's the long-term model that really works for the ongoing delivery of the strategy? And when we come into you with the refresh strategy, again, some of these actions that are in the current strategy will carry on through into the new strategy as well. They may just be enhanced or shaped a bit differently depending on where we're at the moment.
You'll find one of the more interesting things, the clusters have led to some unique economic development opportunities which are not common around New Zealand. It's not easy to get entire sectors to work together because they're competitive, but because of the specific culture in Kapiti of one of collaboration, creativity, innovation, we found in setting up a food and beverage cluster with the industry, they were very open to sharing expertise, sharing even facilities. So we've got this council invested in a food and beverage logistics hub at the Bond Store, which is extremely successful. We are also looking at a proof of concept for a shared food hub under one roof, but we will pilot that first just with a certain business model that the board is considering at the moment. But these unique opportunities to work together have been outstanding in terms of it's raised the national profile of Kapiti Food and Beverage by attending the Auckland Food Show, for example. It's raised the national profile of our tourism industry by attending Trends, which hasn't been in New Zealand before, the huge international conference. So working together is one of the strongest suits that Kapiti has to offer, both our district and the region and the nation. There's a stronger focus on export now as a result of that feeling of confidence beyond the size of our companies, building the scale from a cluster. And I'll let Darren talk about the housing.
Just if I could talk. Ian, can you hear me? That's right. Advocating for a new and improved essential infrastructure is another area of focus. Excuse me. The EDKB is actually partnering with Kānoa, which is the Regional Economic Development unit of MBIE, really to host an event which will be presentations to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister Jones, but in the first quarter of 2025. So we're working with Council, very closely with Council, to develop infrastructure candidates for that fund. That fund starts, I think, at $1 million per project, but it increased, and it will depend on what the look and feel of the project is, but it can be staged over a period of time. I think there's 250 million put aside for this fund. Is that right?
So there's $1.2
1.2
billion in terms of the Regional Infrastructure Fund, and we're coming to talk to Council on the 17th of September
Yeah.
about that, and do a briefing in terms of proposed approach with Kapiti, working with EDKB and other stakeholders, and how do we tell our story in terms of the opportunities. So making sure there's that overarching story that's then supported by the opportunities that Neil's mentioning.
And the importance of this is that they will only be accepting projects that actually have a start. And we've got a number of areas which we have a start in, and which will just need investment through stages. So that's coming to you. Did you say in September? Is it?
17th.
17th of September. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll just get to the end of the slides, actually, before we ask questions. Is that the last slide? No.
We provided an update to you on housing recently, so carry on.
Sure. So by working closely with sectors, so doing deep dives into sectors, we've been able to understand their unique opportunities that I've already mentioned, but also their unique challenges, what is holding them back. One of the challenges in our business community, we have over 5,000 business units. Many of them are very small, don't even have one staff member. And for them, it's scale up. How do they get their cash flows up above $100,000 or $200,000 a year into the first million and beyond? How do they grow? How do they scale up? So not so much startup, but actually scale up. How do they emerge from that difficult position? So this is one of the areas that the ED strategy has been focused on, to understand what are the barriers to scale up. And an ecosystem that supports that scale up is going to be so important for a district like ours, which has a large number of small companies.
So the cluster approach is identifying some of the barriers that are there. And we've, for example, with food and beverage, if you're looking at a shared kitchen, at the moment there are all sorts of issues around, bringing in other businesses into that shared kitchen space. At the moment it requires an audit each time. So there's a real compliance cost and there's a real inefficiency aspect to that. Those things have been nutted out, have been brought to the attention of Council, and they're starting to work with and finding the ability to be able to overcome these barriers which are in the way of business being able to progress.
I think another important thing with clusters is the level of Council and EDKB involvement will reduce over time. So
That's
we
true.
may start with a heavy involvement, and over time the aim is for the clusters to become self-sufficient. And what we've seen in the food and beverage space already is that those businesses are getting together and actually come up with their own opportunities, their own projects that they can take forward, and also linking up with other clusters such as tourism, those sorts of things. So that gives us the opportunity then to actually bring on other clusters. And so some of the discussion that's been having recently is in terms of the creative space and how do we work in terms of Council in that area and looking at other opportunities to work with other clusters going forward as well.
Yeah, and a mature cluster is one where they get the self-governance, whether in fact what they do is as a group, they actually can collaborate and tender for work as well. So that's a more mature cluster, and self-governance doesn't require any other form of support, and it runs in its own way. So that as you say, Darren, it helps us to move into new clusters and provide that initial support to get the coordinators getting the businesses closer together, understanding it's not competition, it's collaboration, and they in turn will move through to sort of step up and scale up in terms of their business sizes.
We mentioned the destination management plan and that it has many facets to it, including product development, visitor experience. It also has the council's investment in major events. So we have 8 major events over a given year, and these are funded mostly by council and some private sponsorship as well. They have given us an average return on investment of 25 to 1 across those 8 events. So that's quite a major achievement, again, under the economic development strategy. In terms of the support for the creative industries, there are aspects to the creative industries. There are the artists themselves, there are creatives in the digital space, there are the economic opportunities from leaning in with tourism opportunities for creative. So all these things are still to be considered, and as you can see, we've got a lot of space ahead of us there in the creative industries. In terms of the climate change and resilience strategy, our businesses are quite engaged in the sustainability space and to understand impact on them and resilience through that, whether they're land-based or whatever. There's a business network called Pākehī Toitū or Kapiti, which is the Sustainable Business Network for Kapiti, where we again have a lens into members of that group, into how they are thinking, how they want to be more resilient, more sustainable. So that program is going quite well. In terms of supporting business networks, it's a bit hard to read that last one there because it's got something across it, but I think it says something we've already covered, so I'll keep moving.
So can we just come back to the supporting the development of groups?
Sure. Absolutely.
I just want to give you some sort of idea of the size and scale of what's being produced in our business ecosystem. So we've got, within the cluster, within the food and beverage cluster, we've got 125 businesses. Within tourism, there are 60 businesses involved. Within the technical cluster, there are 50 businesses involved. The sustainable businesses, there's 50. The newly formed the Otaki Te Horo Business Association has 80 plus members. We have the Maori Group, as a business group it's called, has over 65 businesses in it. The Chamber is obviously a cornerstone to this in the ecosystem. And so the ecosystem is starting to mature. We're starting to actually get a cohesiveness about it that can actually lead to much more sustainable business activity, much more informed business activity, and much better economic development all round. So that's the state of it. It started off rather sparse. It's now starting to become more cohesive, and the likes of startup communities and business activities are underway as well. At the moment, we've got, I think, about 8 or so businesses that are moving through to the sort of Dragon's Den, I think in about first quarter of next year. So taking those businesses through what they need to understand and need to do to be able to be attractive to investors and to step up and grow their businesses. So the ecosystem is starting to look really quite sound. Parapara Umu Business Association would be great to have one of those. Haven't got one of those yet, but that would just about top it out.
Going back to the workforce plan, so we have the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs to look at how we can get young people into employment. I mentioned a skills hub. It's being led by Mills Albert, and that hub ultimately will be technology enabled. The vision is to have people trained on simulators as opposed to going straight onto the heavy machinery. So that sort of technology theme is coming through a number of clusters: food and beverage manufacturing, tourism. As we know, what made a business successful 5 years ago is not guaranteed to make you successful now. AI itself alone is going to change the game for so many. And as we all progress towards that, it's really key that we understand how technology is going to enable us in all of our sectors. So the workforce plan foreshadows that jobs themselves are going to change and that skills need to change with it. And so these programs have that longer term view, as Darren said, even though we're not all the way there yet through implementing their workforce plan, it's because it's a long term positioning.
Sorry, Mark, I might just add some more recent developments is our engagement with MSD. And I think an exciting next step from Mills Albert being that MSD has agreed that they're going to coordinate in with the EDKB to look at opportunities for youth. You will have heard the term NEETs, which is effectively young people who are not in work or education, employment or training. So they're going to be working alongside us to see how we can support those kids, and have committed to bringing some more training programs and funding into this district. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'll actually be able to give you a number about what size of support that looks like. But this is going to surprise everyone. The change in boundary between Kapiti and Otaki has been of benefit to Kapiti because we are now able to access funding from 2 districts instead of 1 district. And the Wellington Regional Commissioner has committed to bringing stronger presence into this district and apologise for not being here. So I feel like that's a big recent win that Mark and I were engaged in last week.
Yeah, just if I could add to that, one aspect of the Mills Albert relationship is looking at simulators. Simulators being the ability to simulate that you're in some of the construction equipment, and that's an important part of this program. But what the EDKB has to do there is look to see how that could be applied to other sectors, not the same simulators, but also to other operators and to other requirements outside the district, so that we can sustain, if you like, that business activity or that educational activity across a number of sectors that are things like, for example, civil defence, and other ways of applying and ensuring that we have a good utilisation of those simulators. So it's good to sort of look at not just what you would regard as just being the sort of normal educational practices, but it's looking to ensure that we can attract rangatahi into those areas, let them understand what's happening in construction, and giving them the ability to be able to try it before they get involved in the process, but also to assist them to integrate more into the businesses that follow.
So just to round off on that workforce plan piece, we've been working with education providers for the last 3 years. We've worked with UCOL and Whitirea, which then became Te Pukenga, which may change in the future as well. We've worked with the colleges, but most importantly, some of the NGOs. So Work Ready Kapiti, Kapiti Youth Support. These are all part of the ecosystem for how we want to work together to support people into the right sorts of jobs as they transition. We'll move quickly now through the rest because you have seen it before. What's going on? Thanks, Evan. So I mentioned the workforce plan. We've done that. Oh, there we go. welcoming businesses to the district when they're attracted to move to Kapiti for various reasons, including lifestyle. It's really important the role that council plays and this business support ecosystem plays in welcoming those businesses and helping them settle in quickly. So that's still a work in progress in terms of understanding the needs of businesses, especially when they need to find buildings, build something, establish a cafe or whatever. These are sort of business startup journeys that we are working to facilitate through the ED team and others. So the regulatory environment is really key to a very healthy business system, and it will lead to attracting more businesses and, most importantly, talent to the district. If you look at the tech sector, one of the biggest issues through the COVID period was attraction. Just couldn't get enough developers, enough IT people. Now, of course, it's a little bit easier to do so. The destination story is something elected members have been briefed on just recently in terms of our recent engagement, and you can see that the process that has been led by the EDKB and the Kapiti Coast Tourism Advisory Board has been to work with experts, Wellington-based experts, to really understand what visitors are looking for in a visitor experience and how to break through the very cluttered marketing space to get our voice, our story told, and attract those visitors to come to us. Yes, we've used a Wellington lens because our major visitor population at the moment is from Wellington, but not exclusively. International visitors are growing rapidly to Kapiti Coast. So the story is designed to really take that all on board and position us appropriately with respect to our competitors, Palmerston North, Wairarapa, Whanganui, etc. So that's the destination story process that we're going through at the moment. And I've already mentioned the Major Events Fund. So we're into part 2. The impact.
So we'll just take questions on part 1 first, if that's okay. I understand part 2 is a bit shorter than part 1, is that right?
This is all part 1.
Part 2 of part 1.
Yes.
I think it's a good point to take questions, though. Yeah. Any questions on that part? Shelley?
I know I keep going on about this, but within our unique opportunities, we're not identifying our network of CWB, Cycle, Walkway, Bridleway. It seems to get lost, and to me, I think people travel somewhere to do something, and we're really focused on food and beverage, but people won't travel an hour just to go out for a meal. They'll come for an activity, and the food and beverage is the backup or the thing they do after. So it doesn't seem to appear much in here. And also I'm wondering if when you meet with the ministers, will you put that master plan for the CWB network in front of them too, because that's actually a very unique opportunity and no one else has that. And then going into our clusters, are we thinking ahead at an ecotourism cluster? Because ecotourism, where do you go for that? You come here, you know, and potentially if we grow our network, we've got so much more of that. It doesn't seem to appear in here. You know, advocate for new and improved essential infrastructure. I suppose electrification to Otaki is essential, but are we also advocating for improved infrastructure to grow our network that will attract tourists?
So what we've got in front of us so far is a report back on activities that were previously decided on.
Yeah.
So now is not the time to debate those.
I'm just wondering.
That'll be the next some things that we could potentially add for the next phase.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the report that we've just had is measuring outcomes against those previously identified actions.
Okay.
And I was just going to add to that around the Regional Infrastructure Fund, 17th of September, hold that thought, and we can have a chat. So I just wanted to say Neil probably won't touch base on that now because we're going to go through a process with everybody.
Yeah, good to raise those things though. Yeah, because there'll be, you know, as we move forward, there'll be an opportunity to have a new activity plan which will reflect some of those things. Nigel?
Yeah, just a couple of bits. One is it was good to see that we're outperforming Wellington, but not surprising really because they have Wellington NZ helping them and we don't largely, so it's probably why we're ahead of them on that. I just wonder in the piece about because this is a big deal for me, the support and development and delivery of a Kapiti Creatives Industries plan, which if you look at all of the little charts, that's the worst of all of them. I'm not taking that personally. I'm sure that has nothing to do with me at all. But what I am concerned about is that in my view, and I'm happy to debate this with anybody, is that creative sector is the thing that marks Kapiti against anybody else. And yet that is the area in which we are performing the worst. So, and I understand this is a then and not a now, but the now parts are all over here, and that then and now part is back over here somewhere. So,
Very good thing to flag.
but also,
In my view.
what it says here is that this looks like you're waiting for the industry to coordinate and develop a creative and culture strategy, and yet that's something that council went to a consultant to do. Didn't happen very well, so we're still back in that. So I'm just wondering, are there two creative and culture strategies being developed independent of each other?
The short answer is no. That piece of work, as I understand it, is a work in progress with council at this point in time. Is that
No
correct?
idea.
I was going to talk to this action as it was set up. So when this action was put into the strategy, there was an industry group that was set up. Gina Lee was leading that
Oh, that's right.
at
Yeah.
the time. And so industry wanted to take the lead, and so we took a very much industry-led approach. The big concerns, the big issues that they had was resourcing and the ability to continue that work. I suppose we're in a situation now where council has been doing its piece around the strategy. We've taken on board feedback in terms of that strategy that is now being sort of rescoped and looked at. And what we've been doing with the EDKB is working to say, how do we bring industry into that and make sure it's resourced in the right way to support them in terms of next steps. So, in terms of where it was going, there was some support that was provided to the previous one. It didn't continue. We need to now get more involved.
I might just
and
add
really
that
good to note that a community-led or industry-led group is starting to form through Councillor Coe as well, so work's starting to happen in that space. Excellent.
Oh, thanks.
Good on you.
All
And
power to them.
I would just quickly comment, I think the work that's being done in the food and beverage sector has been superb. It's really good that sector's coming together. I'm assuming we're working closely with Horowhenua, who are very much in that same space as well, not in competition with us, and the tech sector. Just wondered about with AI, and I know it's all moving very quickly, but there are a number of councils and cities all around the world who have had a look at the AI impact as an overlay across their city. It's not necessarily the biggest piece of work because you can get AI to do it for you, interestingly enough.
No, it's true.
But it'll tell you what the likely outcomes are going to be in various sectors. So I'm just wondering if that's been done, because AI is really about the question that you ask.
Yeah, the point you raise is absolutely bang on. There's two areas that we have really good expertise here, and that one is AI, and the other is cybersecurity. So we have a talent pool here of technologists, and there are two themes that certainly are going to be developed a lot more.
Great, we're going to move on with the presentation. Oh, Bede, sorry, no.
Yep.
Very important.
Yep. Hopefully this will be quite quick. Just thinking in terms of dials as to where work's up to. One thing that didn't come up was post-COVID, there was some funds that went into retail strategies for, I think, 3 town centres. One of those was for Raumati Village, and there was a list of deliverables. And I'm just wondering where the dial is on those. And one of the things that people still ask me about is the website that council promised, which obviously didn't happen. So I'm just wondering, where is the dial on that particular piece of work?
I think I might need to come back to you on that. I'm not totally aware of that. That was some time ago, wasn't it? And it was a piece of work that was Chris Wilkinson completed. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take that offline and we'll come back with some information. Is that all right, Chris? Yeah.
We'll take it offline.
Yeah, I think we just need to look at it a bit more. It's not that we've got anything to hide. Okay, we're moving on with the presentation.
Sure. Pictures, so visuals on some of the outcomes. This is it's mostly all the real events that have taken place, and the support that we're given to business awards. The gold awards are this week. We've had various capability building, many capability building activities in the tech space, for example, and working with the Chamber of Commerce, who brought in TechStep funding, and we've collaborated with them on getting young people interested in tech. So that will be repeated again next year, as will Tech Week. So we've gone through many of these outcome highlights, and so for time, I might just skip through those. I see Tech Week up there. We did win an EDANS Economic Development New Zealand Award for the work in the workforce plan that brought together thinking for both young people and for those who want to get back into the workforce once they have retired. And as you can see, all of those things that we've touched on already.
Yeah, I just think, Mark, two things that I think are worth just highlighting without getting into the detail is visitor number and tourism spend each year from 138 million in 2021 to 205 million in 2024. That is something to be happy with. And our council's major events investment has an average annual return on investment of 25 to 1. Again, that is, I'd say, what you would consider excellent return on investment.
Thanks, Chris.
Congratulations on the award.
Yes, thank you.
Flick us an email when things like that happen would be good.
Yeah, that
so
was
that we know and we can
a
spread
little
the
while
good
ago.
news. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So it really is good to actually look at the independent measures of what we've just been talking about. We've put together these graphs from the Infometrics website, and I think Darren in particular has been across those. Do you want to touch on any particular areas?
You look in terms of the measures, so these were set during COVID when the world was going through a whole lot of flux. We set quite broad measures at the time to make sure that we could have a good benchmark of what's going on in terms of comparing ourselves with other parts of the country and also internationally. In terms of the results, we've had pretty good results during the period of the strategy, and the local economy has performed really well. During COVID, when people were spending locally, actually being more in the community, we saw a real uplift in terms of retail spending and those sorts of things. And we saw that, areas like Wellington really suffered during that period. We are seeing the impacts of the current economy, though. We are aware in terms of, spending is more difficult. It's pretty tough out there. So making sure we're keeping aware of just what's going on at the moment and how we're tracking and trending. In terms of employment, again, we've had good results. We thought that during COVID there was going to be a lot of unemployment. We've actually saw the opposite in terms of businesses struggling to recruit people, and we've seen good growth in terms of employment. Again, though, in the current climate, we are seeing that it's difficult for people to secure work. It is especially hard for young people at the moment, and they're the ones that are either getting let go or not getting a chance to get in the door at the moment. The other people that are impacted is generally our older parts of our community is also that are needing to continue on in employment because of the ability to access income as well. Unemployment, so we've tracked really well. The concern is if we have unemployment too low for too long, people can't find a workforce. People can't find the people they need to actually fill the jobs. So it's a blessing and a curse. And definitely in terms of NEETs, so those are young people not in employment or education or training, we have seen quite a large shift in the last 12 months in terms of increasing number of people in NEETs. Business units, really good growth in terms of business units. I think it's a reflection of the Kapiti Coast economy. We have a lot of small businesses, a lot of people that are self-employed, and a lot of people that are doing it for themselves, especially after COVID. You know, we definitely saw a lot of people actually wanting to take on their own opportunities. And so been good growth there. But again, we will probably see an increase in the number of businesses that are shutting up, in terms of businesses that are closing. That's for a number of reasons in the economy. But the other thing we're seeing is that the tax department is going around and chasing people that haven't paid their taxes. And we've seen quite a big sort of number of increases in Auckland, and now they're shifting through the country. So you'll probably see that there'll be more receiverships coming up in the news, I'd say. In terms of household income, so we've seen good growth in terms of household income. It's generally at the same level of growth as what's been seen nationally. But the problem is that we started a lower base, so our household income level is lower than the national average. And so our focus in terms of a lot of our work in ED is how do we get people into higher paying jobs? How do we get people so that there's more household income going in? And that continues to be a big focus, because the higher the household income, the more ability they have to spend in the local economy and all those sorts of things as well. So it's tracking well, but there's still room for improvement. It's always hard to explain some variations in terms of yeah.
Must be.
So thank you, Darren. So just in summary, significant progress has been made in the delivery of the actions of the Economic Development Strategy. Delivery of key plans, the destination, the workforce recovery plan. That's well underway, and clusters, as you've heard about, tech cluster, tourism, startups, food and beverage, and in due course, creative and wellbeing. The Wellbeing Collective has, I think, at least 80 people involved, Councillor Coe. And growth across the impact measures during this period has shown that whilst we performed well, there is a current economic climate having a real impact. And as Darren has just outlined, we may have not seen the worst as yet for the reasons he explained. We've had lots of positive feedback from local businesses that Council is working with, and the EDKB has helped, and the engagement is continuing to increase. So that's a really good thing. And then there's the business ecosystem that we're all seeking to improve as well. So that's the summary of where we've got to. The next steps are to consider with Council on the 29th of August this report and have that received, and any further comments, and then in due course to bring to the October Council meeting the refreshed Economic Development Strategy 2025 and moving from there on. And we're about to move into talking about the EDKB structure.
Sorry, before you do, side note, just want to say the impact measures that we just stepped through from an independent source, Infometrics. So while that blip is interesting and could be several million years moving in, we will find out what that is so we can just close that loop, but it's an external source and independent of anything we do here. So we've basically copied and pasted graphs rather than had access to the data. So we'll investigate that.
Great. I think we've had questions as we go along. Are there any residual queries? Nigel?
The engagement with businesses, that you went through the numbers of businesses in clusters that we've been engaging with, and the total number that you gave us 425, and of which quite a few of those would be repeats, because people are in, But even let's say there were 425 completely individual businesses, and as Mark was saying, there's over 5,000 businesses. So we've really been in touch with about 8% of businesses, and I'm just wondering if you think that is sufficiently representative So last week, for instance, when the launch of the destination Kapiti, whatever it was, Capitals Coast, so there were 6 tourism operators there. I don't know how many tourism operators there are in Kapiti, but there were 6 individual organisations that were there. And again, I'm just wondering, in terms of the broader feedback, what's the plan for talking to not just some cherry-picked industries, but or players, but the broader spectrum?
Just to answer that, I mean, we have to start somewhere and start and to seed and to grow. And as Darren made reference to, once there's a maturity there, then you've got resource then to focus on other aspects of the ecosystem and to grow and develop those in the same way. So the plan for 2024-27 is more of the same to some extent, but to bring on board the likes of Creative and then the likes of hearing from the business associations and effectively getting more business associations established. So for the first 3 years, I think we've done as good as we can do with the funds that have been available. I think once we look and if we get involved, for example, in the infrastructure and RIF, that's going to create quite a lot of activity over a broader sphere, if you like, of businesses. So the cherry picking that you refer to was fundamentally driven by 2 things. One was the workforce plan, so that's the education and training hub. The other was destination plan, which aligned to that, and the synergies with food and beverage is very, very close. And the idea of identifying technology is to look at something new that we can build that's going to stand us apart from other regions. So the rationale behind each of those things, Nigel, and in terms of coverage, it's not always about the immediate sort of coverage you've achieved. It's where you're actually tracking and where you're going to grow and develop into. That's where it'll stick, if you like, and we'll have a very solid economic base to build from.
Councillor, could I add? Just that the portal that these groups create it's a portal. It's not that we're only going to talk to 60 tourism businesses. So it's a portal because they talk to their colleagues who talk to their colleagues. We can't reach everybody as a small capacity team, but the way is one to many, and we do it through the portals. So the portals are the deep dives into the clusters, the business associations in the town centres, the business networks right across the district, like et cetera, et cetera. So it's about 1,700. We've worked out that we reach about 1,700 businesses as opposed to 400. And through our business newsletter, now you're aware that we've just gone live with Business Kapiti, the website. So we will drive businesses to that website, which is always on and always supportive, if that helps answer the question.
And just on the destination strategy, again, unfortunately, it looks like Wellington NZ have been helping. So I can see that. I just personally think that's going to be utterly disastrous. But anyway, one of the questions I have around tourism and tourism strategy is in most receding economies, the one thing that we do know in tourism areas, that what they do is they boost internal tourism. So it's internal tourism that they're looking at. So, for instance, you would encourage people in Waikanae to go to the movie theatre in Waikanae and to go to the restaurants and the theatres and all of those sorts of things. So internal growth, that's where it comes from in receding economies. And we know that Wellington City itself has a very much a receding economy, and yet we seem to be doing most of our marketing. The plan is marketing to Wellington, that's our big customer, and yet really we've got 50,000 customers right here who perhaps aren't utilising our own. Ask locals how many times did they go to Ngā Manu, or how many times did they go to Southwards, and it's surprising how many people think, I must get around to that, and they actually haven't done it.
Yes, so to that point, Nigel, we've got 3 retail activation plans in place. So that's designed, if you like, to deal with that activity. Yeah. Also, Wellington, New Zealand does have it's a very good portal, if you like, for overseas. They've got very good relationships with overseas wholesalers, so it does bring in that sort of international tourism activity.
And definitely in terms of our visitor website, a big thing with that was the ability to control the local content, the stuff that didn't fit on the Wellington NZ page, and make sure that we can promote not only to Wellingtonians, but to other people, including their own community, actually what is happening locally as well,
Okay.
sort of thing.
Okay, we've got a bit to go, so we'll move on. I think we're done there anyway. Thanks, Nigel.
Evan, could you switch to the other? Thank you.
What have we got next? Do we want to let some people know that we're running late?
This shouldn't take very long, I wouldn't think.
Next person's Jason, district planning.
Okay. Great. Okay, Jason won't mind. It's just Jason.
I'll text him. Jason's very
I'm just
accommodating.
paraphrasing Chris there.
Jason's very accommodating is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
that came
we're
out a
just
bit wrong.
building on so we're into the next phase, are we? Which is the EDKB business model, preferred business model. Obviously, you've had 3 previous briefings on this: August 23, November 2023, and April 2024. So it's not like it's coming to you new. So that's all good background. The body of work that's been built up in 20 to 23 is such that it's going to require considerable investment to operationalise those projects, and so the EDKB and council can't afford to continue to fund into all of these activities and do them justice. So we need to look elsewhere for investment, and the board itself is a board. It's not an entity. So as such, it can't enter into contracts. It can't enter into commercial agreements. It can't enter into strategic relationships that are commercially focused. So it's very limited in what it can do, unless it changes its business model. And we're looking to change its business model, as we've said, I think, previously, to one where it can. We're looking to establish a separate business model where there is a charitable trust, and a charitable trust that sets up a general purpose vehicle, which is a limited liability company, and where we have special purpose vehicles for growing and developing and operationalising the projects that we have at that stage. So if you look at the diagram there, we've got the charitable trust, which you'd set up a separate trustees for. They have a separate trust deed, and they have a relationship which is with council for support and for updating council on where the limited liability company or the GPV is, how that's performing. The relationship between the general purpose vehicle and the trust is one of a shareholder. So the trust is the shareholder of the limited liability company. The limited liability company is able to go out there and to find investors for various special purpose vehicles that can be food and beverage hubs. They can be a range of business activities that we've got in mind, and that will commercialise and help businesses within those to step up and to scale up, and to be have a larger influence, if you like, in terms of the economic development of our region. There's key relationships between the general purpose vehicle and and council. The use of the economic development team, which, by the way, has performed superbly for the last 3 years and is one of the best teams that I've seen around. They are a very high performing team. So they will be used, but there's going to be transparency between the limited liability company and council, in that the limited liability company will be briefing council on all matters of development of special purpose vehicles. They will be aligned to this and will agree with council on the strategies and be informed about what other strategies, what other complementary strategies are being formed within council, so that we're not out of step with what else needs to be done. And generally, it's making sure that we continue a close relationship. Only we're positioning ourselves to get much more investment to commercialise the projects that we're intending to commercialise. In a nutshell.
Very good. That was a nutshell. Any questions? As you said, we've been quite well briefed on this. Bede?
Yes. This is a quick question. Yes or no? Is the intention to have council sitting on the charitable trust?
Yes. Not council, a council representative.
Right. So does not
We're looking at a trust of trustees, 4 or 5 trustees.
Yep.
Can only be one. Otherwise, if it's more than one, it's more than 20%. It's a CCO.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does that not create problems with the principle of independence?
Not at all. No. It's
There
one
are
person.
precedents. For
Okay.
instance, the Mahara Gallery Trust Board and the Paraparaumu Sports Hall and the Farazine Trust.
Just because there's precedent for something doesn't make it right. I'm just asking the question
you're
because
questioning-
there's concern.
So potentially we should bring back the entire list of other organisations that council sits on and we
No.
should have a look at all of them? Is that
No.
what you're saying?
Not at all. I
Yeah,
just
well-
said to you the fact that there's precedent doesn't make it right in a specific circumstance.
Okay, point taken.
I just want to note that we're taking a similar approach
Cool.
as the Affordable Housing Trust.
Point taken, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be familiar. You should be familiar with the concept of a precedent. And all I was saying was there is a precedent for this. Yes. Okay, we'll take that conversation offline.
Can I just say also?
Nigel?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wondered, looking at the model here, and I'm not trying to be cantankerous. It's just that I can't help it. I think looking at this, what would, in my view, probably be equally successful, given the laudatory view you have of KCDC's economic development team, which I agree with. If you just took the EDKB Charitable Trust out of this picture and just kept with the KCDC's ED team, and then had general purpose vehicles, and then through them SPVs, then really all you've done is cut out the middleman, and from a council point of view, cut out any potential conflicts of interest with council's own economic development policies. So, for instance, EDKB have been particularly gung-ho about keeping the Wellington NZ thing going, which in my view is completely disastrous, and I think a case can be made for that. Won't make it here today, but I will at some stage. But being able to internalise these things with a highly effective ED team, how then necessary is the EDKB charitable trust? I mean, again, it's just
I guess it all comes back down. The closer you're working with council, the more there's a risk. There's the charitable trust as a shareholder is taking the risk of some of those commercial activities going belly up. Otherwise, it goes directly to council. That's one key risk through the structure. So the charitable trust, the shareholder, would just fold, if you like.
Neil, I wonder if it'd be useful to share that you've received some legal advice
Oh, sure.
on the different options that you've previously
Yeah,
spoken
we've covered
about.
those previously. Yeah, there are the different models that we've looked at. We've looked at 4 different models. This one just seems to meet our needs in terms of how we can grow and develop our region. Others are more closely held, as you've said, but they're generally more mature in terms of where they are with their own economic development, and this just does give us the opportunity to work with others. Well, at least New Zealand, if you bring them into the equation, they can be an investor. You know, in an SPV, they don't have to be doing what they're doing. But it's going to be all judged on what the risk they see and what opportunity they see, the investors see. I think the closer you get to council held, the more difficult it is to attract a broader range of investor.
Yeah, so at the moment we are we are a significant investor in Wellington NZ, not the other way around.
Totally, and that needs to be dealt with, and we've got, obviously, we agree with what needs to be done. It's just a matter of us working together to deal with that.
Yeah, and just one final observation from me is that the idea that somehow council is shielded from or somehow indemnified against risk because there's an external organisation, albeit one that's attached, doesn't work. When these things go wrong, what happens is council gets blamed for it. That's how it works, and it's the same thing when you set up a housing trust or whatever. Because it's still
Sure.
tied and linked to council.
You
so
don't want it
that's
to
where
go wrong, do you?
No, that's where it comes
That's
back
right.
to.
So I mean, that comes back down to making sure that when you are doing your business cases, that you're professional about that, and you're minimising your risk.
I might just add to that, because I think risk is one element of it, Neil.
Sure.
The other is that unless there is, I'm going to say, sufficient independence from council, there's some restrictions around what council can get involved in and what we can't. And if I use, for example, a recent conversation about RTOs, so regional tourism organisations, that wouldn't be something you stuck in the middle of council, but it might be something that you stuck in the middle of over there, because there is that independence. And so even with funding from government, there's some funding we can't access at the moment because we're council.
Totally.
But the EDKB will actually be able to access it, have access to it because they're not us. And that trust being in the middle of it, I think, makes all the difference because that limited liability company, I think, would be more set up like a CCO, which would have closer connection conceivably to council and would miss those additional benefits. So I think that's what I was meaning about the legal advice you had, Neil,
indeed.
as they step through all the what benefits you get and what would the risk be. So if that's useful to circulate,
Yeah, I
happy to
should
do
bring
that
that back
again,
again,
just to show that we did look through the different models and what it would give to council as well as a newly set EDKB.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, that's a good
sorry.
point. I think it's a different point to the one that was made around risk and being at arm's length through being independent. But yeah, but I understand you're coming back to the asking for the legal opinion, which is about a different topic.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
I've got that clear. Liz?
Look, I just want to say that this is not about risk. And I want to give you some history around why we have an EDKB. And I'm talking to Councillor Wilson as much as anybody here, because this has been a 15-year journey for me personally to get to this point. And I know, and you were at the very first meeting where we set up KEDA, right? And the reason why we pushed so hard for so long to have an EDKB is at that time we had about half a person doing economic development in council. It had no resource, no funding, and it's only because of KEDA and the Chamber pushing and pushing and pushing, because there was no recognition of economic development as even being something that anybody was remotely concerned about at council. That's why we have an EDKB. It brings the focus, it brings the resources, and we have fought so hard to get it set up, to get it resourced. Remember at the last LTP sessions, I said I want $1 million for economic development, right? You know, it's people pushing and pushing and pushing to get it resourced so that we can have jobs for young people. We can have higher levels of income. We can have a proper tourism industry with a proper strategy. All those things that are really important for the well-being of people in Kapiti. That's why we have an EDKB. It has nothing to do with risk. And I will fight this to the death because I've fought for so long to have the EDKB in place, and it was always intended that it be independent of council. Do you know why? Because councillors, elected members, historically know nothing about running businesses or how to do economic development. I'm not saying that's true of the present lot of councillors, but there is a risk going forward that we won't have the same team of people we've got around the table that we have now. And so we need to get it. We need to have our local business community having a big say in how we do economic development, because they are the biggest stakeholders. We cannot rely on elected members to do the right thing for economic development. They don't understand business a lot of the time. And I'm not talking about the people here today necessarily, or I might be, I don't know, I'm not going to look at you. But we, you know, politicians are elected to represent their community. They're not represented, they're not here because of their business skills or their business acumen or so on.
We're kind of running out of time. Can you
Right,
wind up your
okay, so,
monologue?
okay,
It's great, it's
I'll
great, I'm
finish my
loving it,
rant
but-
for now, but just be warned, anybody that challenges the existence of the EDKB and the direction it's moving in to go into a trust, be warned, because yeah, I'm going to get my brickbats out, and I'm absolutely determined, because
She's
this
digging
is-
a ditch and she's going to lie in.
yeah, because this is just so important. That's why I've devoted a big chunk of my life to getting to
Look,
this point. So
look,
there,
Liz,
that's it.
Look, I really, I was around in those early days when you were beating your head against a brick wall trying to get a structure like this set up. I remember a meeting, particularly down at the swimming pool. I was a bit of a fly on the wall at that one, but yeah, truly acknowledge the work that you've put in over the years. And look, I picked up what you said, that elected members don't always have that skill. So I'm going back to what Bede said, and I know it's a detail that can be tweaked out later, but maybe there can be a position available for a councillor, but you don't necessarily need to fill it if you don't have somebody with those skills around the table. Because you want everybody to, you don't want seat warmers, do you? So
But it
let's
can
keep
be a
talking about that.
nominated person. It doesn't have to be a councillor.
Yeah, that's a good.
Just as we did for the housing trust. We don't
Yep.
have a councillor
that's
on the
exactly
housing
right.
trust.
Yep. Yeah, let's make it a, yeah, let's have a look
And
at that.
be to your point
So
as well.
Glenn,
Sorry, the limited liability company has directors, and the directors don't have that person on from council or council.
She's talking about independence.
So
Okay.
the directors are all independent
so
on the limited liability company. So there's two governance groups. One's for the trust, and one's for the limited liability company. The way that the trust is set up, it has one representative from council, and the other governance group is all independents.
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Glenn?
I think it's
So if it's independent, why doesn't anyone from council? Is that because we're still continuing to fund it?
so
Or is it-
the relationships that we've got, those the what we're calling I can't read it up there, the framework, the relationship framework will deal as effectively an MOU. It's effectively saying, here's how we're going to work together. This is what we're promising to do in terms of when we're looking at SPVs, when we're looking at whatever businesses briefings, what our business cases look like, they'll all be shared with council. So you've got a thorough understanding of what decisions are being made.
So will the ratepayers end up putting more money into this new operating model, or less?
We could probably less. What I haven't mentioned is that the trust actually will apply a dividend back into the community as well. So the trust will have charitable purposes, and whatever dividend is flown through from the limited liability company, that will go back into the community.
Oh, yeah, right.
So there should be, just to answer your question,
So just like to understand the cost to council.
Yeah, so I think, Glenn, what you're asking is there is a business rate that currently funds the ED work,
Yep.
and that's
I see.
that's not changing. And what Neil just said to you is, over time, the idea is there'll be a dividend back to council from the work that they do. So, I mean, I'm not going to make promises here, but the idea would be it should pay its own way eventually. And so that their job is to get funding in from elsewhere rather than to rely on council to do stuff. But they have to set up.
Yeah,
So they have to
but-
set up first.
But added to that is that you will make decisions to invest or not to invest in some of the SPVs that are there as well. And if you do invest in that SPV, then there is a return that relates to it, which is separate from the dividend. So it's putting it more on a commercial basis. You're getting a return from your investment, whereas at the moment you won't.
Okay.
Yeah, starting to.
Look, Nigel, is yours a burning question that's going to be really quick?
And it's
Okay.
a direct follow-on as well, and it's sort of what constitutes independent, and who determines who the independents are. So, say for instance, what we've had in the past when there was considered to be a largely independent group around the tourism strategy, say Te Urahi, for instance, and there was a pretty broad view that the independents weren't very independent at all. In fact, they had skin in the game, and so. I guess in this situation, people would want to know what was the process for determining that independents are actually independent, because in the past they clearly haven't been.
Independent of what?
Well, that's what I mean. Independent of council, presumably, but then independent of projects or.
So the trustees will be appointing the directors of the board, and it'll be done against the skills matrix. So it's aligned to what they can,
Yeah, this is going over stuff that we had in our briefing too.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think lesson learnt today, there's no such thing as a quick briefing. So thank you for answering all those questions and being here to give us the information today, and for all the work that's been going on, and for the excellent results against the previous economic development strategy. Absolutely so much going on and such excellent work by you and the team. So if you could pass on our thanks to the rest of the board as well, that would be much appreciated. And thanks to Mark and the team too, if you could pass that on.
Sorry, if I may just note as a final comment that I will send an email round, Tale of Two Halves. Any questions or things that you have in follow-up, really appreciate it if you can send them through, just so we're prepared to be able to respond to you. And I just also did want to note that we are proposing on the 29th to have some of our business community to come in to share their thoughts about things like the clusters and how things have gone for them. So you've heard the story, but we think it would be good to hear from our community as well. So just want to let you know that that's also planned.
So also the previous briefing that we had around the trust structure, will the same slides be coming? And if not, can we have those previous slides circulated to councillors and community board members as well?
I will send 2 packs out with the previous briefings, along with the message I just popped down now. And if you can come back to me, I'll give you an end date acknowledging that Super Locals this week.
Yeah, it is hard to remember every detail,
Yep.
and we have looked at various kind of structures of
Absolutely.
different kind of entities lately, and it's easy to get them convoluted in your head sometimes. Thanks for the work you've done to get us to this point too, Liz. Yeah, much appreciated.
Sorry, Neil's just asked. Neil, what I'll let you know is exactly what decision you've been asked to make. So we're only starting with, just like we did the Affordable Housing Trust, it's in principle, and then we start to step through stuff underneath that. So you're not locked and loaded into any particular purchase cost anything as we go through this process. So there's a whole ton of gateways.
Can I just suggest, though, why cost is important at the outset, at least indicative costs, because say something was going to cost $2 million, well, we would go, well, no, that's just crazy. We've got people in-house who can do that. But if they said, well, it was going to cost 100,000, well, pick a number that's an acceptable number. But there will be a number, I guarantee you, that's an unacceptable number. And if you have that at the outset, then you can make decisions. But what happens is if it just becomes this iterative process, frog in the pan, it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer without
And
you noticing.
it's
till
too
you get
late to
a
turn
point.
back before you know what the cost is.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
exactly. Yeah.
So what I can say right now, just to alleviate anyone's fears, is we'll be coming back to you reflecting what is already built into the LTP. So we're not asking for additional or anything else. We've already got what we think it takes to make magic happen. And we're also going to be talking about the Regional Infrastructure Fund, which is using someone else's money to do stuff. And so we'll be coming back to talk to you on the 17th about that. And so I think I've talked to you guys before. Pretty exciting opportunity, someone else's money to do stuff. So ka pai. But a great point, and we'll make sure we note that in the paper just to clarify that point.
Great, thank you. Is everybody okay? We've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Can we take a few minutes to have a little stretch? Yeah, I think we need it.